So Malamar in Pokemon Sword and Shield is really weird because it has weird stats. Like, it doesn't excel at anything, and like it doesn't. Malamar's weird because it doesn't excel really at anything overall. Like, it has overall like decent stats: 86 health, 88 defense, and 75 special defense. So you can tank hits, but you're not super tanky. 92 attack and 73 speed. You have decent attack and you have decent speed, but you're not gonna outspeed anything or really one-shot anything. 68 special attack is not great, but there are ways around it. And your abilities are contrary, which is one of the best abilities in the game if you have moves to go with it. Suction Cups, which is an ability, honestly. And Infiltrator, which is pretty good if you run into one of these things, but if not, then it's useless. But it's Dark Psychic, which means it has a 4 times weakness to Bug and it's weak to Fairy, but it's immune to Psychic. So it's like, Malamar's really weird. The only thing about Malamar that's different is the way it evolves, which is by flipping your system upside down. Like, that's the only thing special about Malamar, because other than that, it's just very, like, normal in a way. Like, it's everything about it is decent, but nothing's really great about it. Like, the main way to run Malamar is just Contrary Superpower, because Contrary is one of the best abilities in the game, but the problem is Malamar doesn't have any use for it, because normally it's used for things that, it's like, oh, Leaf Storm, for example, with high base power, but the drawback is the lowered stats, or Superpower, or Hammer Arm. Malamar, only move Malamar can use with Contrary or Superpower, so it's kind of a waste of an ability, because everything else, it sucks. Like, that has a great ability, but has no way to take use of it. Like, you could do things, though, in, like, doubles with, like, Swagger, or if they're going to use Intimidate, or they used, like, Intimidate or something like that, you can make use, or if you know, I mean, not Swagger actually would hurt you, but, like, if you know they're going to use Intimidate, or there's certain ways around it, like in double battles, to help Malamar out, but, like, it's not really worth it. But the main thing is Contrary, Superpower, and just raise your attack and defense and get really bulky, and just do a lot of damage with Throat Chop, Psycho Cut, and Liquidation. The other thing that's weird about Malamar is its speed. Its speed's at 73, so it's not going to outspeed very much, even with max speed investment, but it's also not slow enough for Trick Room. So you run that, you're in a weird spot. Like Trick Room, like this in Trick Room, for example, would be really good if Malamar was the slowest thing. But with 73 speed, even with a negative speed nature and no IVs, you still outspeed a lot. Like, you outspeed a lot of Trick Room things. So unless you're going against just a really fast team, or a team that doesn't have anything that's slow, you can play around it, but it's alright. It has good moves, though. It has good moves, which is weird, but it just doesn't have anything with Contrary. Like, Throat Chop's pretty good. Throat Chop / Knockoff. Knockoff does more damage, but you only get that attack. You pretty much get one hit, and then it drops back down to 65. But Knockoff's really good. Same with Throat Chop. Psycho Cut, it's only stab physical psychic move. Liquidation's just a really good move. 85 base power. There's also Foul Play too instead of Knockoff, but it uses their attack stat, so it's not the greatest. Lash Out if you expect to get a stat lowered, which is weird because you won't really, especially with Contrary, you won't really get a stat lowered. So it's one of those things where you have to kind of play around it, but pretty much max health, max special defense, and you just want to get really tanky and just kind of try to take everything out. But it's like, even then, you need some speed in Malamar. Like, if you can get some speed, like, and run something like this with the max speed, like, you get some speed in Malamar, then yeah, Malamar can pretty much sweep at the end of a battle and just superpower everything down and just constantly raises attack and defense so he can take physical hits. And if it needs to switch up and use a Knockoff or Psycho Cut or Liquidation, he can just take them out, but if not, just superpower everything down. But like, Malamar needs some speed for this to really work. But another way to use it is just max health, max defense, and just focus on coverage and hit them super effective. You either Knockoff, take away their item, Psycho Cut for damage, Superpower if you need, like Superpower if these two are neutral, you just need that damage. Because the problem is, even if you get the Superpower and the +1 attack and defense, you don't outspeed, so they'll just hit you again. And especially if they're special, they'll probably KO you. So you kind of have to play around that. You might survive an extra hit because of the Citrus Berry, which is why I like it on both of these sets. But you kind of got to play around just damage, and once you get low on health, or if you have a feeling you're going to get KO'd, you can take a hit, Destiny Bond, and then they have a choice of, do they want to hit you and risk getting KO'd, or do they want to take a hit, do they want to switch out, like what do they want to do, because they only have 4 attacking moves, and you can't KO them, and you use Destiny Bond, you either force them to switch out, and force something else to take a hit, especially in Battle Spot, that's really big, but you kind of have to play around that with the Destiny Bond. So that's why I like having that in that last spot instead of a liquidation. But this is what I mean. Malamar has good coverage, but not really good ways to use it. Like, it has Nasty Plot, which is really good. I wish I got Swords Dance or something along those lines. Swords Dance, or like, I don't know, another move that lowered its stats. Something. But pretty much, you want to set up as much as you can with this Malamar. Again, you need speed with this one. Like, if you can get a Tailwind or a Trick Room or something like that. Again, it depends, depending on what you do, to change up the EVs. If you're going Tailwind, for example, give it max speed. But if not, your best bet is just doing it like this. Especially if you can get it, if you can give it like a +3 speed, then you don't really need to give it speed investment. And you can play around with this and get a Nasty Plot and just go from there. Nasty Plot or 2. The problem is Life Orb though, so you have to be really careful of how much damage you take after, like, deciding between a second or a third Nasty Plot, because you need the damage because your special attack's so low. But Trick Room, take away the speed investment and run minus speed nature. But Nasty Plot and then Dark Pulse, Psychic, or Psyshock. Malamar needs the damage, so I would say Psychic, but Flamethrower or Thunderbolt in this last spot. Like, Malamar has good coverage, like Flamethrower, Thunderbolt are really good coverage moves, but it just, or Stored Power too instead of Psychic if you want to, especially if you put speed into Malamar, like you Baton Pass speed or something into Malamar. Stored Power is really good because it'll have even more base power. It'll have close to 100 after a Nasty Plot. But Malamar, you gotta buff Malamar up through other means for it to really be good. Like, even this, you won't do a ton of damage, so you run into that risk. That's why I said Malamar's not really good. It's not really great at anything because its stats are so in the middle. But something else you could do with Malamar, which is probably honestly the best way to do it, is just Scarf Contrary into Superpower and just try to outspeed and take everything down with Superpower and just constantly raise your stats. And as long as they don't switch in something that resists fighting, you'll get to a point to where you're just doing a ton of damage. Especially once you get a +2, +3, and your defense will be up there. So you can just take some physical hits and just KO some things, especially at the late stages of the battle. Just come into Malamar, just pretty much sweep, because you'll outspeed a lot. I'm not gonna say everything, but you outspeed a lot, and your Superpower raises attack and defense. So once you just outspeed, and if they're physical, you'll take that hit, especially after a +2 or 3. But some of the other moves, like in case Superpower is resisted and you switch out, you come in, a good knockoff will do a lot of damage, if not KO. Psycho Cut, Stab, and Switcheroo, just in case you need to get off the Scarf, or if you can give it to something that's really slow or set up Pokemon, something like a Clefable or something like that. Just something that's really slow or tanky. You can kind of give it a Choice Scarf and force it to not really be able to do much, especially if it needs to set up. You can kind of shut it down with the Scarf. But, like, Malamar is weird. Like, Swagger is pretty good in doubles. You can do some things with Swagger. Again, Hypnosis. Hypnosis is good. Reversal. Like, if it was faster, you could do some things with one of the berries and Reversal, but it's too slow, and its attack's really low to do something like that. Payback. Like, if it was tankier, Payback would be an option. It would have 100 if you go after them, so you could do some things like that. I would never use Night Slash, unless you're just banking on that crit chance, just because it has other dark moves. Foul Play is really good too on like a special Malamar. If you want to throw in Foul Play on this, because it uses their attack stat, so it could be a lot of damage. Or if you just want to run Foul Play and just bank on hitting something really strong. Its signature move, Topsy Turny, is like it inverts the target stat stages, but it's like you're not tanky. You don't have Prankster. You're not tanky enough to really take a hit if they've raised their special attack a couple times to really make a difference. And if you do, you switch it for one. You'll take a hit, switch their stats, and then they'll switch out. So it's like it's kind of a waste of a move spot. Like if it had Prankster with Topsy Turny or something, that'd be really good because you would go first, flip their stats, and then they wouldn't do any damage, and then be forced to switch out. But not really. Also, I would not Dynamax Malamar because its stats are so weird that like you won't do enough damage Dynamaxed to really make a difference, and you wouldn't be super tanky either Dynamaxed. Like a Bug type would still do a ton of damage to you Dynamax, especially specially. But Malamar, and you're slower too, so Malamar is not a good Dynamax. It also has Rock Slide, which is decent coverage. Both Giga Impact and Hyper Beam. Scary Face, like it has some things. You could like Scary Face it in actually I don't think you can Scary Face in doubles. Yeah, you can. So you could Scary Face it in doubles to double its speed with Contrary. Some things like that. That's why I said you can play around it in doubles, but I don't know if it's really worth it to do it for Malamar. Guard swap, trick. Like it has its own trick room, but it's weird. Retaliate's also an option for the scarf set if you want to just, for this one, if you just want to bring it in and just retaliate 140 base power for that first move. Actually, yeah, 140. Same with facade if you want to bring in case you get status facade instead of probably, just in case one of the other moves, it doesn't really matter which one. You could, if you want to play that risky game, you could run a reversal on this instead of probably superpower, but that's a really high risk that you're gonna get low on health and be able to survive, like be low on health and very situational. Again, ally switching doubles is really good. It has calm mind, but you're not gonna be, it's no point in running calm mind over a nasty plot. Liquidation's really covered. It also has like disable and acupuncture, so you can do some things like that and doubles if you just want to run acupuncture and go from there with like a little gimmicky set. Disable's good if you like, it's slow. That's the issue. It's slow with very weird, like very normal stats. So it's like, okay, it has disable, but you'd have to take a hit, disable, and then whatever they use next will probably KO you because everything hits you neutral, except for psychic. Everything hits you super effective or neutral, so you don't really have any resistances. You can't switch in on anything, so it's very weird. Also has lash out and expanding force, but again with contrary, lash out will almost never happen really, unless they swagger you. Like that's also another thing about contrary that can screw you over, is that if they know you have it and they use something like swagger or flatter or something like that, that hurts you a lot actually. But expanding force, but you can play around contrary, like you can help yourself out with contrary with them, and like if you know they're gonna use a bulldozer or an icy wind in doubles for example, like then you raise your speed. So there are little things you can do with contrary, but they rely a lot on the opponent, because Malamar, it either relies a lot on your ally or your opponent, because Malamar doesn't have many things it can do to help itself out. But that's how to use Malamar in Pokemon Sword and Shield.